Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Wes Naylor. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Helicon Chemical. Secretary Hsu, Admirals Hughes, Morley, Rondeau, and General Glavy. It's my honor to be able to sponsor and kick off this panel addressing how we advance productivity and innovation at the intersection of industry, academia, and government. American business in general, and small business in particular, are uniquely positioned to move rapidly and leverage relationships with academia and government to reestablish our leadership in innovation and industrial capacity to meet the challenges we face from peer competitors across the globe. I would offer that our team at Helicon Chemical, where we produce the world's most advanced propellants and energetics, is the model for how these forces can come together to drive innovation. Our material science solution was born out of work for the Missile Defense Agency by doctoral students at an R1 university. Our technology was developed and refined via SBIRs and OTAs, and we are now scaling our production capacity to meet market requirements in energetics in partnership with the Navy, Air Force, Army, and MDA. We have shown that the intersection of industry, academia, and government can answer the call if we create the space where these entities can innovate at the speed of business and the speed of relevance. Helicon will continue to expand our nation's capacity to answer the bell in energetics through avenues like the Defense Production Act and the Office of Strategic Capital. We believe that we embody what this panel will be addressing today. And we show that technology, policy, and authorities are not the true challenge that innovation is facing. The challenge is flexibility in business process and creating the next generation workforce that can do this work for our nation. I'd like to thank you all for being here today. I look forward to our panel's comments and the discussions on these topics today. Thank you very much.
Well, and a very good morning to all of you. It's great to be here today. I want to thank Wes Naylor out of Helicon. I knew Wes when he was leading the Navy in innovation down in NOC, TSD, and so the fact that he's now leading Helicon is really good for all of us to have that kind of transference of knowledge and experience. I want to thank Navy League for the intellectual capital, the provocations, and the richness that Navy League has given us for so many years, and Julia Simpson for being our Sherpa, our shepherd, and making sure that we were doing everything right and well. So thank you to all at Navy League for what you are doing for us. So the word innovation, it's a Rorschach, depending upon who's hearing it. Tactical innovation, operational innovation, strategic innovation, organizational innovation, business innovation. What does that mean? And what does it mean to have an innovator to create, nurture, and to really help and support the innovator? What does it mean to be in an activity that is innovating? And what's it mean to have organizations that are known as innovation organizations? These are all massive questions. Our panel today, they are rich in being able to answer and to talk about all those aspects of innovation. But we're going to try to bound this in the sense of technology, of people and processes and technology, and understand what that means towards innovation. And the acceleration, speed, effective speed is what I would say. We talk about speed a great deal, but effective speed means that this is not going to just go fast and then be done, or go fast and not be enough. It means it's going to go fast and be really good. So we're talking about ideas to impact and being able to really bring out transition and delivery of capability. The word innovation, though, and innovating has been the buzzword for us for a long time, but there are three aspects of it that I really very quickly wanted to cite some experts in all of this. So speed. Eric Schmidt out of Google says in his work, Innovation Power, the ability to innovate faster and better, the foundation on which military, economic, and cultural power now rest, will determine the outcome of the great power competition between the United States and China. Culture. The new head of the Defense Innovation Board, Michael Bloomberg, says DoD's challenges are not primarily with its technologies, but with people and process. There are not the proper incentives and thus the necessary culture for those working within DoD to take appropriate risk and to move as needed. Speed for innovation. And for process, Steve Blank out of Stanford, who was a co-founder for Hacking for Defense, and with whom we have some work at NPS, says, competing effectively in the modern international system and regaining America's competitive edge will require not only the rapid adoption of advanced technologies, but more significantly, by the degree and speed in which these new technologies are leveraged. So with that in mind, this panel is intended to talk about those kind of things, ideas to impact, and to bound this in the sense of people, processes, and technology. First, we will hear from the Honorable Heidi Shyu, the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering, who serves as the Chief Technology Officer for the DoD and has published the OSD 14 critical technology areas that guide research and technology investment. Following Ms. Shyu, we will have Vice Admiral Frank Morley, Spanky, Principal Military Deputy Assistant
Don't worry about it.
Secretary of the Navy for Research, Development, and Acquisition, and comes to the job as a career aviator, test pilot, and a long career in naval acquisition, and a driver of innovation and transition. We're going to hear another call sign here in a minute, folks. But now I have also Vice Admiral Jeff Hughes, Deputy Chief of Naval Operations for Warfighting Development, who is also responsible for warfighter and warfighting to include management and investment of the Navy's education enterprise, otherwise known as HUGE. And we'll also hear from Lieutenant General Matt Glavey from the Marine Corps, the Deputy Commandant for Information, who also oversees education programs for the Marine Corps and brings his information warfare Devops mindset to fires and other aspects of warfighting, and to the talent and people transitions and management for the Marine Corps. So, with effective speed in mind, Ms. Shyu, if you'll please start and give us about 5 minutes of your thoughts, and we'll go around to then to Admiral Morley, then to Admiral Hughes, and General Glavey, as we go about, first of all, listening to their thoughts about these things. Ms. Shyu.
Sure, thank you. So, first of all, thank you for the invitation to be here. I'm delighted to be here with you, with my esteemed colleagues here. I want to say one of my key jobs within research and engineering is to focus on the joint warfighting concepts. Literally, JWC 3.0, we just reviewed it yesterday with SecDef and General Milley, and that will be eventually signed into a doctrine. So this is definitely coming. So that particular document, I know you guys are probably aware of what we've been focusing on. We've been taking the joint warfighting concepts and decomposing it into the capability that's needed for a future, a highly contested fight. From that, what we've been doing is identifying, are there critical physics-based modeling and simulation we can do, okay, to describe what are the options we may have in terms of choices. That is tied into a campaign-level modeling and simulation activity that we have developed. And that campaign-level modeling simulation capability enables the team to literally play red on one side and blue on the other side. It's 8 a.m., Monday morning, let the war begin, right? So literally, you have a physics-based modeling simulation to tell you the outcome of the conflict. And then what we're able to do is learn from that, and the next day, you can run that again, okay? And from the modeling and simulation activities, the next piece we're tying in is the prototyping activity. We want rapid prototyping and tying the rapid prototyping into experimentation. Experimentation not just in the laboratory, but experimentation in a real exercise, in a live environment. We're tying that to live virtual constructive simulation. All of that information we're tying together as part of the radar activity, Rapid Defense Experimentation Reserve, which is ongoing this year. 23 is the first year of funding. Each of the services provided their ideas and got their allocation of funding, and it's off and running right now. And this is a sprint that we will be doing every 6 months that's tied into a vetted scenario. I've worked very closely with my counterpart, Dr. Bill LaPlante, on the acquisition and sustainment side. So the prototypes that's demonstrated as a part of the radar activity, if it proves out the utility, the joint staff identifies we really would like to have this. It closes one of the capabilities that we're looking for. Then what we will do is figure out multiple pathways to enable us to go into rapid transition, get it into the hands of the warfighter as quickly as possible. So we're closely tied into the joint staff, closely tied into all the COCOMs and the services in all of the activities that we have ongoing. The other thing I will quickly talk about is in terms of what we're focusing on when we talk about issue papers. Issue papers when we actually ask for extra budgets. But what we're doing, I'm very much focused on asymmetric capabilities. Asymmetric in the sense that the best way to describe that without going to the classified world, if you think about asymmetric capability, what happened in Afghanistan, literally IEDs was very asymmetric towards our expensive vehicles, right? Very low cost bomb can blow up a vehicle. So I'm looking for the asymmetric capability against advanced adversaries. So all of this stuff is ongoing. There's one last piece I will talk about. Finally stood up a war room, okay, in the Pentagon. That war room is clear at all SAP levels, okay? TSSCI with every single caveat you can imagine. One side of the wall, I have the red capability put up. The other side, what I plan to have is have the blue capabilities put up, right? Then what I'm looking for is, are there gaps? If there are gaps, are there asymmetric ways I could counter? And within it, we have developed a physics-based modeling simulation to literally prove out the utility of a particular technology, how it would change the outcome of a mission. So this is very exciting stuff. So all of the stuff is ongoing.
That's great. Thank you so much. It's just great stuff. And your focus on the asymmetric capabilities also allows the ability to take current technology and then transition and use it in some manner by aggregation, by integration, by innovation. So thank you very much. Admiral Morley?
Okay, great. Thank you, ma'am. Again, also, it's my privilege to be here. This great panel. Thank you for the invite. Thanks to Navy League. Thanks to all of you for hanging in there Thursday morning. A pretty good crowd, so way to go on that. Okay, so, we all have a piece of the puzzle here, as Admiral Rondeau kind of described in her introduction. My piece of the puzzle really is being able to deliver these capabilities to the warfighter, to the fleet, right? So, and I would maybe think of that in maybe 3 different ways. There's kind of the tech that's mature that we've been developing that are part of program of records and getting that to the fleet, right? The pure production, execution, performance. So there's that piece. There's also the expansion of that effort in the defense industrial base. If you think in terms of most of us here have never really been in our professions when we've expanded the industrial base, right? We've all been in an era of constriction, so there's a lot of learning to be done here. And then maybe more applicable to the discussion today is being able to take these innovative technologies as they rapidly mature at the pace today and bring those into something that's in the warfighter's hands or to the fleet like that, inside the palm or as part of it. So it's kind of, you know, a way to think about it. We could talk about all those. Ultimately, in this, and we all know it, right? We are in a global competition now, and a competitive advantage, a key competitive advantage, of course, is going to be able to rapidly apply these technical advancements in the field, okay? So that's kind of my piece of the puzzle. I'll just kind of talk in terms of bending the curve. One of the ways I think we need to think about this holistically is we have to bend the curve of the cost and the speed of development and fielding, right, and of tech insertion. We have been, and any entrepreneur, as I'm starting to learn that space a little bit, really thinks in terms of, they'll ask themselves three kind of key questions before they endeavor into an area. Why this? Why now? And why me? Right? So let me talk really quick in those terms. So why this? Well, partly we've been the victims, we collectively, the world has been the victims in development of the systems engineering process that we grew up with that really came around in ballistic missile development. Complicated systems, you know, the systems engineering V, tracing all these problems of design. The challenge is we've gotten inherently more complex. We've got hundreds of millions of lines of code that need to talk to another hundreds of millions of lines of code. That process is strained at best. And so that's a challenge that we've played the victim. But, and Ms. Hsu started talking about a little bit of this, the digital tools that technology is bringing us today in modeling and simulation and digital twin and digital design and manufacturing are perhaps for the first time in a while providing us the tools that will allow us to bend that development curve, to do this differently, rapidly increase the sets and reps and work out the problems of design and development early and shorten that timeline. So that's kind of the why this. Another key part of that is that because there's been a flip, as most folks here probably understand, that you know, 20, 30, 40 years ago, 75% of the technology came out of the government labs. Today, that's pretty much flipped. 75% of the key technologies that are driving what we need are really coming out of the commercial space. I think 11 of 14 of the key technology areas from Dr. Hsu are really driven and led in the commercial space. So we have to be able to tie in, tap into, and bring in that area as well, and I would say in partnership with our industry partners. So that's a key part. And a final piece of the why this I'll just add is the radar process that was just mentioned. That's been pretty, there's a lot of good stuff going on here. This is helping to bridge that gap of tech development, whether inside or outside the government, into applicable programs and delivery capability. And Ms. Hsu's able to shape our behavior and what we focus on based off of dangling free money for everybody, right? So, so it's got a lot of promise. The why now, I kind of touched on it. The tools are available, and the geopolitical reality insists on it, okay? And then the why us, the simple fact is we're the ones in the position today to make a difference in this critical era. So that's kind of what I would tell you there. I will just end here for the opening remarks is that ultimately we seek an extremely unfair fight if we have to have it, right? And that's what this provides. That has been our model. That model is challenged. We have a near peer, competitor. It is a competitive space that we did not grow up in post-Cold War. And so, but we've been here before and we know how to do it. We seek an extremely unfair fight, or even better yet, to make that fight so unfair that it deters a fight. So that's kind of the objective, and I look forward to the discussions.
So expanding the industrial base being the first time in a long time that we've done that is an interesting thought, because it also has to have as a complement how we do that differently than we did in the past.
Right.
So it's really an interesting question. Admiral, very good to see you, sir. Over to you.
Thanks, Ann. First, I'd like to thank the Navy League and certainly Wes and Helicon. Ann, thanks for the invite and for moderating, and obviously to be with these esteemed panelists is a pleasure. All right, so I'm going to start today the same way I started for an earlier panel on Monday, which was the future of warfighting. And frankly, I'm going to riff off of how Spanky closed out there, kind of defining what it is that we want to do and how all of this comes together. So really where I'm going to focus is on discussing the Navy's approach to warfighting development and the prominent roles of education, learning, and strategic threat-informed analysis. So for me, it started with a reorganization of the Navy staff back 2019, so we've got about 4 years of runtime, where N7 was assigned as the lead for the Navy's strategic framework. So how do we get after this strategic, comprehensive competition with comprehensive competitors that we haven't seen ever in the history of our existence? So N7 is not like a traditional Service 7. We're organized more like the Joint Staff J7 with a little bit of the 5, a little bit of the 8, and a little bit of the 3. So what does that mean as far as the functions that we perform? So we're responsible for the Force Design 2045 vision, developing it and then maintaining it year after year. We also are responsible for the Navy strategy and service level concepts, and then how our contribution will nest into things like the National Military Strategy, National Defense Strategy, and the Joint Warfighting concept. We also provide the strategic context for force employment and force development. So we provide the front-end matter, the strategic context that then goes in to drive our annual programming and budgeting submissions. We also perform the Navy's strategic level analysis functions, and we run an annual campaign of learning. So what we do is we align and prioritize the qualitative and quantitative analysis and experimentation across all methods and tools. So on the qualitative side, think wargaming, tabletop exercises, studies, emulations. And then on the quantitative side, think the modeling and simulation tests, experimentation, and exercises. And then finally, we lead the Navy's education and learning enterprise. So cognitive warfare, how are we increasing and improving our intellectual capacity across the force? We want to develop warfighters who are going to be the future joint force commanders, but equally as important, we need to make sure that our Echelon 5 COs, those ships, submarine, aviation, SEAL team commanding officers are confidently employing mission command. And this will extend all the way down to every single sailor and Marine in the fight. But equally as important, we need to make sure that we're bringing this education and learning across the foundry to those that are doing the force design, force development, and force generation work necessary to confidently put forces on the map. And this reorganization 4 years ago, by design, placed warfighter development with the warfare development function under the same organization and the same command and control. So just a quick calibration on what's in the Naval Education Enterprise. So the Navy flagship institutions, U.S. Naval Academy, the Naval War College, and the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey. We also have the U.S. Naval Community College. With our teammates across the Naval Service, we've got Marine Corps University. And then we also extend out to how we manage those students that go into the civilian institutions, as well as educational experience opportunities like fellowships and scholarships, as well as things like tours with industry. And then finally, most of this is still very much in residence, but we're really pushing hard to look at those alternative delivery methods. So low residency graduation education programs, distance learning, and hybrid methods, which are necessary for the adapting force of the future. So I just want to hit a couple of things what I would consider, what's the value proposition for the education and learning enterprise? I'm going to look at it in terms of both the individual level as well as the organizational level. So at an individual level, nothing here is going to be a surprise. We need strategic thinkers. We need critical thinkers. We need creative problem solvers. One of the 6 force design imperatives in the CNO's NAV plan is decision advantage. How do we sense, make sense, and act? Mission command is markedly greater than just tactical prowess. It's how do you deal with uncertainty, the fog and friction of war. And we've got to be able to do that at machine speed in the future. And we've got to be able to outpace the adversary in this perspective. This all reinforces a culture of mission command for competent warfighting. From an organizational perspective, the NAV plan is explicit. Student and faculty research will focus on warfighting concepts and capabilities our fleet needs to compete and win. So this is the confluence of renowned faculty and warrior scholars driving us to solutions faster than a potential adversary. I'd also say there's a juxtaposition of how this then helps drive organizational learning and the adaptation of speed. I was taken by something that the vice chief said at the luncheon on Monday, in that she views this decade more like the interwar year period of the 30s than of the 80s. And that really speaks to that learning and adaptive organizational learning culture. So what are we doing to enhance and modernize the naval education enterprise? So again, back to the NAV plan, charges us to align our curriculum and research to deliver warfighting advantage. And just like Spanky said, it's delivering those outcomes. So we've got 4 primary areas of focus. 1, we got to teach the right material. So it's warfighting focused learning and development, and it's relevant curricula delivered across a continuum of learning. We need to modernize and expand our delivery, broader reach and accessibility. And again, we got to look at different methods. In residence, obviously, but we got to go into distance learning as well as hybrid delivery. We got to get the education and learning to the right people at the right time. Better talent identification and management across career paths. We have 21 unique officer career paths in the Navy, and one approach does not work for all of them. So we're learning from what's best in class in some of those communities and bringing it up to a Navy standard. And then equally as important, we need to determine the billet requirements. What are those knowledge, skills, and abilities for every position? And then we need to improve the realization of those that go into an education and learning experience and get that back out there to drive outcomes. And then lastly, we need to focus on Navy, naval, and joint relevant research. We need to send that right demand signal to get after those 14 areas and to get after the concept-related capabilities that are going to really move the needle that we will assess through the analysis agenda and make it happen. So kind of in summary on the kickoff here, I'd say education, learning, and adaptation for continuous improvement are foundational enablers for innovation. We cannot educate for purely academic purposes or put research on the shelf. This is education to win. So as we go forward, I'm going to be keying on 3 things as we have our discussion: relevance, speed, and outcomes, not activity. Thanks, Dan.
You know, Hugh, it's interesting because if you go back to the 30s, as the vice chief did, there was a coherence to learning and warfighting that in my time in the Navy had actually dissipated. So what you're doing is bringing coherence and linkages and accountability, for that matter, of all learning and education to the warfighting capability of the Navy and of the Marine Corps, for that matter. So the portfolio linkage is pretty masterful, so thank you. General?
Ma'am, thank you. Admiral, thanks for this invite. Thanks to the Navy League as well for hosting this amazing event. When I saw Secretary Shue on the panel, I said, I don't think I belong on this panel. if you want to know one of the real influencers in the Office of Secretary of Defense, it is her. When she speaks, everybody listens. So it's an honor being on this panel with you, ma'am. I'm going to just take a little bit different tack. Someone once told me, Skirt, every once in a while you got to smell the roses and not eat them. So I'd like to riff off of what Admiral Hughes had just said and look at what education has done as the Commandant has executed Force Design 2030. It is truly powerful. If we want to look back at all the outcomes-driven events that we have had, you will find an NPS graduate in the middle of it. It's remarkable. I keep score on this to fully understand, to his point, how our outcomes generated, and specifically through education. My personal experience transforming the Marine Corps Enterprise Network into a clunky on-premises capability, and in less than 6 months into a full-up hybrid cloud capability. Remarkable. Transformation was supposed to take 18 months. These amazing Marines put it together in less than 6. Really, really influential. As the Commandant looks at talent management, everything we've done at Manpower and Reserve Affairs, there's an NPS grad like smack dab in the middle of it, leading, truly leading. They were able to move 56 applications into the cloud and do it without drama and to do it really expeditiously. If one were to look at what we're doing from a warfighting aspect and what we did down at MCTIS, our Marine Corps Technical System Support Agency, the wingman for Admiral Small and his project overmatch capabilities, remarkable. 13 NPS grads working on that project. 13. Our Marine Littoral Regiment Laboratory sits there at MCTIS again with this remarkable talent of young men and women. I will tell you, when we stood up Marforce Space, when the 38th Commandant asked me, how are we going to do this? And we decided to put up there at Fort Meade with Marforce Cyber. The first place we looked to gain momentum, literally relevancy overnight, was our 8866 graduates from Navy Postgraduate School. They literally provided capability insights, again, with Doug Small and his team at Nav War, in capabilities unique to the stand-in force that our Marines educated to understand how to take these capabilities, one, understand them, and then take them to the next level in an operational. We became relevant overnight, briefing the commander of U.S. Space Command literally within months of stand-up, providing value, providing outcomes. Probably one of the most things I'm most grateful for what NPS has provided is the opportunities for our enlisted Marines. We have stood up the Masters of Applied Cyberspace Operations, and we pick the creme de la creme of staff non-commissioned officers to go take part in this very important elite education process. They thrive, they do extremely well. Again, at Marforce Cyber, we had a Marine. He was an interactive on-net operator. If you know what those are, like, those are the most important people in the world, literally. That Marine put in a package to go to Mako, and I'm thinking, I can't let him go. Can't let him go. General Nakasone will fire me on the spot if I let this Marine go. He comes into my office, and I ask him, if for some reason this doesn't work out, what do you think you'll do? Very professional, like game on. Sir, I'm probably going to get out. I love the Marine Corps, and but certainly I got other things to do in life, and but really want to take part in this. And so whatever doubt I had, I said, where do I sign? And he went forth, and now he's back at Marforce Cyber doing great stuff. So we have come a long way. I think education is really, you know, and is so important. Every step of force design, every important Marine Corps Warfighting Lab, the main effort for everything the Commandant's doing with respect to change and how does one innovate, take advantage of science and technology to really move faster for everything ASNRDA needs to have done. It's remarkable to watch, but if you don't have that technical depth and breadth, you know, not just good ideas, right? Technical depth and breadth with a warrior operational focus, I mean, you can get places and get there fast. And I will tell you, I really think it's been the secret of success with respect to how fast the Commandant has been able to move in force design. 247 strong there. Today, we watch every of them closely. Everybody's fighting over every one of those graduates, where they're going to go, what they're going to do, and their impact they're going to have. More to come. Ma'am, that's all I have.
And what you have led in many ways, though, General, is this coherence of all of the expertise and the specializations and bringing them into one place, such as space and cyber and intelligence and information. I think that also helps with this people notion of how they see the Marine Corps and how they see the warfighter and what kind of prize that you have. And you've been leading on this with Admiral Hughes, the whole people, process, and technology tie-in. So thanks for that very much. Dr. Hsu, you are passionate, and you're authentic, and you have a book on the whole notion of STEM and the generational speed. If you start to teach a 10-year-old, soon he or she will become your warfighter or your scientist. You've been really advancing this notion of STEM education. Would you care to let us know about some of your main thoughts and themes on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to elaborate a little bit. STEM is incredibly important because we need the talent, right, within DoD. So one of the several things that we're doing, we initiated STEM camps. This is 1 week-long camps with junior high school students, get them excited. And there were 64,000 students attended one of our STEM camps last year. Right? This is how broad of a reach we have had, which is fantastic. And because one of the key things we realize, if you get them excited early, they have a much higher likelihood going into STEM. Okay. The other things that we've been steadily increasing is our scholarship, the SMART scholarship. Last year, we awarded over 480 Smart Scholars, and this is a fee for service. If we pay for 4 years of your education, after you graduate, you spend 4 years in one of our laboratories, okay? So, and during the summertime, you get an internship. It's a fantastic deal. I can tell you our retention rate, even after they finish their service, is extremely high, okay? I'll give you one other example. I went to Naval Warfare Center, and one of the person that was giving me a technical briefing, he said, "Ma'am, I just wanted to let you know that I'm one of your Smart Scholars. I deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, and when I finished my tour, I really wanted to get an advanced education, but I didn't have the financial means of doing that." So he applied for the Smart Scholarship, got it, got his master's degree, got his PhD. Now he's working at Naval Underwater Research, right? So I thought, this is fantastic. This is absolutely one of the success stories. And those are the talent we want to draw, okay? So I'm very passionate about it. And the other thing I want to elaborate a little bit about, I did a visit to University of Texas in El Paso as well as Rio Grande Valley, because that's where it's heavily minority, okay? And I want to figure out, understand more about how do we attract more a minority into the services, right? And get them interested in STEM. So literally, I had the opportunity to speak to 1,000 students. And I mentioned about our Smart Scholarship. And after that, I can tell you, we had a little booth at the university. That line after the speech was out the door and down the hall. It's incredible. So this is how much interest there is. The other thing that I learned is we have to change our internship. If the average family income is far less than the average income of the nation, what you have to do is think differently about internship, because the family may not be able to afford to send their son or daughter away for the entire summer, okay? So we're gonna change and modify our internship program, in which literally you can spend a week or two at one of the laboratories, and the rest of the time you can work from home. We did that during COVID, so we should be able to do that.
So, huge. When Dr. Hsu talks about these things, I know that you're thinking about, okay, that's great for the 10-year-old, and this is really good stuff. The long line's very encouraging. But you're held accountable for how we're doing the Naval Education Enterprise to the warfighter. So that is the next line. You know, we bring in those smart folks, and then you've got to take the Naval Education Enterprise and do something to support the delivery of relevant, innovative solutions at a really relevant and persistent pace. So how are you doing that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it really comes down to speed, and it comes down to outcomes. And I really like Skurt's discussion of mapping the outcome all the way back to the ecosystem to, you know, where was the idea generated, and then how do we actually deliver it across all of the potential barriers that Spanky is working hard to knock down. I'd say a couple things, though, just, you know, from an education perspective. One is we need to make sure that the curricula is relevant, and we got to keep that updated at pace. We're making some progress there, but we got a long ways to go. And one thing, the Navy just recently, the CNO approved 13 competency areas, core competency areas for learning. And from that, we got to determine what those knowledge, skills, and abilities are across the entire enterprise, the Navy force writ large. And then we need to drive that into our development pipelines. And that's incredibly important, and that curricula's got to support that. And it's got to be focused on what really matters. Another piece of that is really putting great precision into the applied research focus. We've got to zip code exactly what problems we need to be solved. We can't just sit there and say, I'm working on something that's related to one of the supporting concepts of the joint warfighting concept. It's just too broad. We got to really help narrow that down to get after the most pressing challenges and opportunities. And through that, I think that also calls for us to drive greater collaboration and prioritization across not only the naval education enterprise, but the R&D enterprise and the science and technology community. And there's an outsized role too for allies and partners in this piece, not only at our levels, but really we've got them in the faculty and we've got them in the student body. How do we energize and use them? And I think you'll appreciate this, the interdisciplinary nature of the work. If you look at the 9 program areas that Naval Postgraduate School has put in place, it's focused and it's purposeful to really bring not only the faculty, but those warrior scholars together for effect. I'd also say this expansion and collaboration needs to take place broader than us on the dais here. We got to go out to academia and even more broadly into industry. So it's kind of the premise behind the SecNav's Naval Innovation Center at NPS concept. How do we bring that broader ecosystem together to focus on the areas that matter the most? Another thing that I think is pretty exciting is this concept of cooperative research and development agreements. So NPS, again, is leading here with, they have dozens of these things, but I will tell you, a couple of the ones that really sing to me, they have one with Microsoft and one with Xerox. Both of those have led to tangible outcomes that map directly to warfighting outcomes as well as helping us in the foundry to improve our ability to understand the gaps and to close those gaps. So a couple things, though, that I owe you, and this is what I think that we need to do better for the schools. We need to ensure that they've got the modern learning and research facilities to keep pace with the need at this point. We need to give them more classified spaces and IT capabilities and capacity. And then we need to improve that talent identification and management to get the utilization from these warrior scholars in whatever billet they go into next or as part of their broader career progression and development path.
Yeah, so thanks. You know, the creative that we began with Microsoft and Xerox have been terrific, but it taught us at NPS how to deal more with industry, how to do that better with 2 companies that the risk margin is different than for small business. So we had a space summit last week that Admiral Hughes knows about, and it was remarkable to hear the warrior scholars who are now working with small business. We have a special warfare and an information warfare officer working on PLEO and leveraging Ceronic Tech, one of the small businesses. We have a Marine Corps captain who's working on hybrid aircraft projects that is now using the hybrid air vehicle, small business. And we're able to then have that ability to, having learned from really big, successful, extraordinarily brilliant businesses, and then how to make it more successful for small business, so it's great. Okay, so we come, Spanky, to you because we have industry here. And we talk about the development of STEM expertise in the nation. We talk about the accountability for STEM knowledge to the warfighter. For decision advantage, you're deep into all of that. And I'm curious about how you see and how we turn the pace of Navy business from a liability into a comparative advantage so that industry and the warfighters can really make this go faster.
Okay, thanks. Well, first I should start out that I don't have a book you can reference, so I apologize for that.
Right.
I do have a couple of memos and a few dozen emails.
Long emails.
We all have a lot of those.
On it. And then just to maybe add a little bit to the last thought first, you know, on the people side, you know, if you're going to, if your competitor has 1/5 of the world's population, there's 2 things you probably ought to shore up, right? One is you probably ought to have the other 4/5 with you on your team. And 2 is you probably ought to fully utilize in the most productive way possible the population that you have, okay? And we just touched on that. So on the 4/5 of the with you, right? I mean, partnerships. You see partnerships as one of the top 3, you know, has been part of every priority service, Department of Defense, National Defense strategy over the last decade. That's an important piece of this puzzle. Hugh mentioned it. We've had all sorts of heads of Navy from many of our partners that are here and many of their teammates that are part of this wonderful week. So I just wanted to mention that we have to do this together on that. The other one on making our population as productive as possible. So a lot of discussion on the STEM and bringing folks up from the beginning and getting them into the fields that we need. I'll just add the other side of the equation. So, you know, my parents fortunately told me when I was about third grade that I am not going to be the shortstop for the Baltimore Orioles, so you probably ought to figure out something else to do, right? And so not everybody is going to be, you know, have a PhD or be working in our labs. And quite frankly, our culture has devalued the trade crafts for a couple of generations here, and we're paying the price of it. So that technology eventually has to be manufactured and built, and this service in particular with shipbuilding, it's a major constraint of ours. And so I would just utilize this opportunity to not forget about that side of the spectrum as well. We need to encourage our parents, we need to encourage our high school counselors, that these are very, very lucrative tradecraft career paths that will serve their nation as well. So just a piece on the people side. To your question, ma'am, on this, a few thoughts. I talked about the application of the digital tools. I won't get too deep into that. I will tell you we're in our first generation now of really building things that were digital natives. I will also tell you that in the wonderful way our system works, we have already accounted for that in the schedule. So you probably won't see schedules arrive early because we built them early. We've already expected that type of performance out there as we go through these learning curves. But we have to deliver the Delta outcome to the digital. We can't just make it more complicated and it takes longer and costs us more. We've got to deliver the Delta outcome that these bring, and we're in our first generation of that learning curve as we see that. The more to the point, maybe deliberate tech insertion type of effort. There is, I would tell you, I think, as I dig into this, 3 structural challenges that we kind of inherently have. One is a lot of this tech that's going to make a difference is going to come in at the 4th, 5th tier supply chain stuff, right? So we will not most likely contract for an algorithm, an AI algorithm. We will contract for an airplane that has a mission computer, that has an algorithm that provides us a capability that we need. So part of this is working in concert with our large industry and our primes to ensure that those innovative technologies have a path that maybe we help develop through SBIR money or what have you, but has a path into the primes and into our stuff. That's one piece of it that we need to continue to work on. The other one is inherently our systems isn't the strongest set up to bridge, right? We put money in to develop. The people that put that money in are long gone by the time that technology matures, and we're pressurized with resources for programs of records and things like that that are developing. So we have to, you're seeing a lot of effort right now in developing deliberate processes to focus on that bridge of innovation, right? So Radar is one of those. The Unmanned Task Force was one of those from the Navy. AFWorks on the Air Force side. Many of these things are deliberately being put in to do, quite honestly, what a startup will do. I understand the tech. I know that this is mature. I go find the operational problem and user that this tech will solve, and then I make that connection, right? And that's a lot of what we're learning now. We're scaling the lessons from UTF and other things in order to have a more deliberate process to bridge that. I will say we do have some structural challenges with regards to the agility of funding, right? We know that's based off our system. There's a PBBE board being met. That's one of the key messages they're hearing. We need to be answerable to Congress, be responsible to the taxpayers that were provided in the right ways, but an agility to apply dollars when there's an evolving tech that we need to keep evolving and maturing and or insert prior to the next palm. That's an area we still need to work on there. Final point, with all that said and all those challenges, I would implore everybody, don't undersell our brand here, okay? I was the international guy for several years. I competed our stuff and our brand on the international stage with all our competitors, and I will tell you, our stuff is what's wanted, right? It works, it's good, it sustains, we support it, we partner, we endure. So don't undersell the brand. One of the biggest things that we can do here to our advantage, which we're doing, is unlocking the free enterprise system and letting it go, right? Munitions is the first thing we're really expanding the defense industrial base on. You see the cash starting to flow. You're seeing it in the budget. You're seeing multi-years. You're seeing long lead procurement direction. You're seeing additional dollars. We've got to work in concert and do this smartly, but free enterprise system's a wonderful thing when it works. So don't undersell our brand. I'll quote Admiral Paparo out in the Pacific here. We're confident that we've got this. We're not comfortable. We're never complacent.
Thanks, Spanky. It's a great then segue to a skirt. So what we have had is the strategic guidance from Dr. Hsu, and thinking about some big ideas, as well as the nation's richness in our people. With Admiral Hughes, just the accountability of how we train, learn, equip, and teach our folks. This notion about how we then think about the transitions to these things. In the end, you the other day in one of your panels here, you said, the quote that I wrote down is, "Change is a mother of risk," relative to how naval aviation has thought about things. And yet you are the master of Devops mindset thinking. So can you talk about the fact that around all of these things, what Admiral Morley just said about us and about our industry and our richness, there's a Devops mindset that needs to lead all of this. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So I spent my adult life in aviation, and really a big chunk of it executing the Commandant's Aviation Plan, where we transitioned every type, model, series airplane in the Marine Corps inventory. 420 F-35s, 349 H-1s, 360 V-22s, 200 CH-53Ks, TPS-80, Common Aviation Command and Control System. I know them by heart like they're PTSD-like events. They're hard to do. So there's a lot of jobs that I don't want in the Pentagon. Number one is Spankies. Building ships, building airplanes, really, really hard to do. So if it doesn't need to be that hard, let's not make it that hard. So in the world of software, where I had a second life, luckily, come to really appreciate the ability of skill in software tradecraft. When I was telling you about the network and doing a complete transformation of it, and these young majors who got in my face, they gave me a book. And the book was titled Scrum, Half the Work, Twice the Outcome, right? I said, oh my gosh, half the work, twice the outcome. That's for me. But really, it described, and many in this room know it, the ability to do scaled, agile, security, development, operations in software. And the key to that environment is what I call owner-operator involvement. It's not a world where you can take a capabilities development document, throw it over the transom to our beloved acquisition partners, walk away for 24, 36 months, and show me what you got. Like, disaster is what is going to come out the other end. And luckily, with Spanky's support, we have now been able to team up more and more with the acquisition with our PEOs and sit down. We call it Task Force Network Modernization. He's been a great wingman. But we sit down and we bring the owner-operator to the table. And if you do anything on a network, you need Mar4 Cyber, you need DISA. I mean, it's so complicated, right? If you don't have the people there, right, literally, day in the life, it ain't going to turn out well. And there's so many things like that, especially in the world of software, where we're not building a ship and we're not building an F-35. So we can turn fairly quickly, legally, lawfully, ethically, with all the acquisition oversight and intimacy with our PEOs in order to get stuff done. it's humbling, like you got to walk in and I don't know much, you know, but it's really powerful to see those outcomes. But it takes, I repeat, it literally takes daily interaction. That's how it works. And the owner-operators, whoever's going to use this software, right, if it's going to be monitors of Manpower and Reserve Affairs, they're going to determine the future of our Marines, they got to be part of it. Literally. I mean, literally. So it's been a great opportunity to get the support of ASNRDA as we go down this journey. We're not perfect, not far from it, that is. But we see some of the past that hasn't worked out so well using the old model. So we're excited on how we're going to do this, more of it. It doesn't fit everywhere. Doesn't fit everywhere. It doesn't fit in building ships or building F-35s, but certainly in software development, incremental success over time truly leads to greatness. Thank you, ma'am. So
Admiral Hughes said, be very careful, the hour goes fast. And so we're not going to have a whole lot of time for questions. So I want to wrap this up to talk about something we've not discussed, and that's international. So we've talked a lot about what we are as industry and the U.S. military here and how we look at training and education and all the things we have lightly touched on. But the international piece here is really important. And so we work hard, all of us, at that piece. And I'll tell you is that the very first time I met Spanky was when he was NIPO. When he called me, he said, I'm selling some ships to the Saudis. They need help on educating about systems, engineering, and steam plants. Can you help me out? And so we did that. So he had that in mind back when he was NIPO and a one-star. That kind of leadership is really important. So I will tell you is that about 2 weeks ago, NPS graduated our 4th Ukrainian Army officer. And all 4 of them have, all 4 of them were sent by their governments to learn about cyber. So they're going to send more. And I was upstairs kind of going over some things and talking to Lieutenant General Reynolds. And in walk 4 people, and I thought they were lost. I said, can I help you? They said, we are Taiwanese naval officers. We've been to NPS. We want to tell you that you are helping us think about ourselves as military officers. And I sat down with them for almost 45 minutes. What's driving you? What are you thinking about? Where are you? What do you think about things as you think about being in Taiwan? And they have a strategic mindset. And at one point, one of the officers said, we understand free market, we understand democracy. We live in this every day. It's very hard, but we're going to be able to prevail. So our international partners are really important for us. And I would tell you is that we are all honored, I think, to be able to say that we're touched by and that we are better off for those international partners. So when we talk about this, let's be sure that we include them in the dialogue. I want to thank these great leaders. They said yes when I asked them, and I'm also grateful to Vice Admiral Phil Sawyer, who helped us to also gather up these great folks. These are leaders. They're leaders, and it is a time, and Admiral Paparo does talk about this time in this age and this need for confidence. I'll tell you, this is the strategic inflection point for the globe, and we're going to win because of leaders like this. Thank you very much.